Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. You ever wonder what it's like to be a lawyer? The things that they have to deal with every day, from prosecutions to representing. I'm pretty sure it's a pretty long, boring, but adventurous job. I have attorney friends. I listen to their stories all the time. But I also see the protocol that goes along with being a lawyer. And I wonder, is it possible to break the stereotypes that we see? Today, we have a young lady who definitely done just that. I'd like to welcome to the show, all the way from San Diego, California area, attorney Rachel King to the show. How you doing, Rachel?
I'm doing fabulous. Thank you so much for having me.
We talked briefly during the post interview, and your story is truly one of interest because you definitely have taken that beast mindset and stepped outside of the norm. Before we get started, share the viewers a little bit about who you are before we get into this journey of legal changes.
Well, right now in 2024, I'm a lawyer, a mom, a wife. I run marathons and triathlons, but I didn't start there. I started as an 18-year-old that didn't want to go to college. So I ended up joining the Army. I had a baby younger than what my family would have wanted, and I was a single mom. But I always knew, even from far before that, that I wanted to be my own person and do great things. And so notwithstanding the Army and having a baby, I finished my bachelor's degree, went to law school. I actually was married with 2 children when I started law school and had a 3rd baby in law school, even though everybody told me not to. And after I passed the bar, I thought, gosh, what am I going to do? And I wanted to practice law my way. And so I opened my law firm in 2014, and here we are. It's been a wonderful journey.
Somebody would say that's kind of a strange path to the legal field. You said you went to the military. Where's your family military base? Because you said they didn't want you to go that route. Well, what even took you to the military, so to speak?
Well, I want to start by saying I have a really great family, but also very traditional points of view. And so it was sort of expected. My dad is an attorney. My mom is a nurse. I have step parents. So the expectation was that I would go high school directly to college. And when I tried college, when that didn't work out, I just wasn't there mentally. I was financially cut off. Almost, immediately, like stuff out on the porch kind of situation. And, while we all think when we graduate high school that we're going to be amazing people, the reality is that a high schooler is totally unemployable. And so I thought, goodness, I knew people from being in Southern California that were in the military, because we have a lot of military bases around here. And so that was where I ended up. I went in, I talked to the Army recruiters. They told me, well, we'll be able to ship you out in 6 months. And I said, 6 months, I'm a really resilient person. If you don't get me out of here in 2 weeks, I'm going to have moved on to plan B. So they did. They put me out I went to basic training 2 weeks later. And again, my family wasn't super happy about that. I'm not from a military family. So they thought I was nuts. And this was shortly after 9/11. So there was probably a little bit of fear in there as well.
Did I hear you right? You said they cut you off.
They cut me off.
Your family. What do you mean when you say they cut you off? Financially, support? Like what does that mean?
Well, initially financially, and I wasn't allowed to live at their house anymore. So I came home one night, I think around 9 p.m., and all of my stuff was on the driveway, and I wasn't allowed to take my car because at that point it was still my parents' car. And I was told that I couldn't sleep at home anymore. that was a different time, but I do remember the first couple of nights I really didn't know what I was going to do. And so I snuck into my parents' garage and slept in the camping gear in the garage, and then got up really early in the morning and snuck out because I knew my mom would be livid if she found out that I was doing that. So, not maybe an ideal parenting decision, but I got my butt in gear really quick and without many options. And being as mentally young as I was, I think the Army provided a really comfortable place for me to go with income, opportunities, and most importantly, a roof over my head.
Yeah, but I mean, how in the hell does that make you feel? I mean, I couldn't see myself putting my kid out. I can't even fathom that. Like, I understand tough love, but you're my daughter. You're just not going to put your daughter out and say, okay. And what was the reason? Because you didn't want to be a lawyer? You didn't want to go to college?
I think it was a mixture of things. I tried going to college and I didn't like it. And they didn't want to, pay for me to live, or I don't know. All I can do is surmise what happened. I don't look back at it as a negative. I really do look at it as probably something that needed to be done. Of course, at the time it was really scary, but I've done a lot of self-reflection, and I really try, and maybe because I'm practice family law, but I really try and not judge people on their actions too much. I think that genuinely my parents did the best that they could, and maybe those weren't the ideal parenting decisions, but I mean, I turned out okay, so it's fine.
You ever asked your parents when you got older, like, why did they make that decision? Because, I mean, I'm still baffled.
Yeah, we've talked about it a few times. I think my mom's reasoning and my stepdad's reasoning was that I had a younger sister, and that they thought that I was they didn't like the influence that I was. Now, not that I was a horrible influence. I just was 18 doing thinking I knew best, and doing what I wanted. So, but I never got into drugs. I never did any of that. So I think it was more from they didn't want me around influencing my sister, who was a 12-year-old at the time. In those ways, I also think my mom was super overwhelmed with the kind of person I am. I've always been pretty strong-headed. I've always really committed to whatever I wanted to do. And she is not that personality at all. So I think she had a hard time with that. My dad and my stepmom, the reason that they didn't support me is because still to this day, quite frankly, except I'm an adult, so I figured out how to deal with it. If I didn't do things exactly as they wanted, they just didn't talk to me. And we went through many times in my life where I would go extended periods of time without talking to them. So I have always kind of been the black sheep of the family. And I think at that point, everybody was just kind of throwing their hands up in the air, like, oh, we don't know what we're going to do with Rachel.
When you went to the military, and
Yes.
First of all, let me say, I know you're an attorney. Thank you so much for taking the time out to come and share this story on the show. You go to the military. How much did that really change your life? And when you went to the military, did the legal profession even cross your mind? Because I know, I guess part of that would be that maybe you felt like maybe you let your family down if you didn't at least try to study law to a degree, because they put you out, you fend for yourself, you go to the military. Some of that still has to resonate. Like, do I need to do this to fulfill their dream or to fulfill mine? How much of their influence was still impacting you as you was in the armed forces?
Well, I think at 18, again, I was pretty strong-headed, and I'd been labeled in my family as the rebellion, and again as the black sheep. So I think when I would make these decisions, which I may have had no choice to a certain degree to join the military, but then when I got pushback, I think that actually fueled like the rebellious side of me. And so it was like, oh, you think I can't do this? You think this is a bad idea? Well, I'll show you, right? This is going to turn out great. I still have tendencies to do that, but I figured out how to, focus them so that they're maybe less rebellious and more positive in my own life. But every time they said I couldn't do something or they didn't like it, when I told them I was having a baby at 20 years old, unmarried, right, in the military, I think the first question I got was, well, when are you going to terminate the pregnancy, right? And so every time I got pushback like that, it was like, really, this is my life. I'm going to do it my way, and I'm going to do it great. And so that is that kind of fed my life through the military and then post-military as well.
You had to do a lot of changing when the military, because military is about structure. How much did that change your life? Because now, despite the rebellion, you can't be rebellious in the military because if you're in combat, that arrogance could kill somebody and jeopardize the whole mission. So how did that really change you and prepare you for being a lawyer or going into college to pursue college? I mean, to pursue being a lawyer.
The values that I learned in the Army really carry through even still today. The integrity, the personal courage, the, even the fake it till you make it philosophies in the military that they teach you, all of that really, I still live those values. Basic training was so hard for me. I mean, I cried. It's sort of like the movies at the beginning for anybody that isn't familiar, where I think they literally make sure that you all arrive at basic training at 11 p.m. in the middle of the night, yelling off of a bus. I didn't know that when it was me getting yelled at 11 p.m. getting off the bus. But then as you start talking to people, it's like, oh, wait, that was you too? Like, not all of our flights ended up coming in that time. So it was really hard. The only thing that made me successful, I think, through basic training was that, again, I didn't want to fail. I don't like to fail. And I've always had a huge amount of self-discipline. So when there was people at the beginning in the first couple of days that were trying to get out and realized they made a horrible decision, I had a company.
What do you, I didn't mean to laugh, but it's almost like looking at Gomer Pyle.
100%. Somebody actually asked where they could go, ring the bell to go home. And that's not real either.
So it was other people in there that you remember that was actually having a hard time like you and was crying and was like, I mean, you talking about peer pressure. I mean, you all there. I mean, is it really that tough?
Here's the thing. I came from a pretty great family, right? Even with all of their issues. And I was rebellious, and I was the problem child, right? And I was the problem family member. And then I joined the military. And at the first time in basic training, you're with a whole bunch of strangers from all over the United States, and they walk you through this room that basically has a path, one way in and one way out. And you have multiple opportunities to drop all your contraband, right? All the stuff you weren't supposed to bring. I hadn't brought any because I'd been told what I couldn't have at basic training. So I kept just passing, and I looked as the first trash can passed and somebody threw a pack of cigarettes. But you know what you can't keep? You can't keep cigarettes, candy, chapstick, makeup. They give you this list. And at the last trash can, people were still trying to get, release things. And I'm thinking, I mean, you knew you couldn't do it. And it was at that point that I realized, oh, Rachel, you're not that bad. You didn't even come with the stuff you weren't supposed to. Look at all of these other people. And I think that felt good to me because, again, I'd always been told that I wasn't so great. There was a lot of people. I loved my military experience. I have family now that is in the military, but I will tell you, the military employs the unemployable at 18 years old. So we were all lost, a mess, coming from all different socioeconomic households, but truly all going through the same thing of, I have to get through this. I don't know what I just did. I'm scared. And I'm also probably a little bit lost in my own self.
Were you validated at all growing up in your household? Because it sounds like that you had to always prove something. It seemed like that there was discipline in the house and love and stuff in the house, and throughout your career, there was very little empathy for validation of what you did accomplish.
Yeah, no, I didn't get validation so much for what I did accomplish, other than, maybe if I got an A or something. But the things that were outside of, again, this expectation, I didn't get validation for. So, I wanted to run a marathon, and my stepdad actually, he stepped up and he's like, let's go run it together. And that was really great. So from my mom and my stepdad, on maybe that instance, I would get validation. But from my dad's side, I would not get validation. It was like, well, why are you even interested in doing that? You should really be focused on school. So I got a lot of mixed feelings growing up. I was the only child that resulted from my biological parents' marriage. And then they both went on and had very long marriages. They're still married to my step parents, but they had their own families there. And I was, I had a split custody agreement. I really grew up feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. And then when I had these other pressures put on, it was like, gosh, I can't do anything right. It probably led to a bit of my rebellion, and certainly gave me the character building qualities that I have today. But it was hard, and it took a lot of self-reflection, and I will be honest, therapy to figure out how to move past some of the things. My parents were not abusive. They were not physically abusive. They were not emotionally abusive, but I don't think they totally understood the effect of how they treated me directly and how they treated me indirectly, how that would impact my life.
When you wind up taking the path to go to law school, what was that really based on? Was it based on trying to prove something, or was it based because you wanted to see a change?
I kind of, if I remember correctly, I always thought I wanted to be an attorney. So that idea of wanting to be an attorney started young. I think at 18, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. I had, self-confidence issues. So I think it was a little bit of am I going to be able to do this? When I had a baby as a single mom, there were days where, I'd have to take her to daycare and they'd tell me, we're out of diapers. You need to bring in diapers. And I'd literally have to lie to them for 3 days in a row and say, oh, I forgot them, because I couldn't afford to buy diapers. Right. And that experience, and then looking and being like, I can't do this forever, right? This is awful. That was sort of the turning point when I said, okay, so I've always wanted to be an attorney. Now it's time to, put up or shut up to myself and not really have any excuses based on what upbringing I had. I was an adult, I was raising a child, and I decided I'm going to change my life. The idea of being an attorney was very attractive to me. One, because of financial reasons. Two, I loved the idea you tell somebody you're a lawyer and they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. When I was younger, that was a really attractive piece to the puzzle. And it seemed like if I did it, you're kind of untouchable once you're an attorney. Now, once that I am, of course, my reasons have changed a little bit, but at least initially in my 19th, 21st year, that was what compelled me to go through and get on the path to actually going to law school.
You mentioned millennium attorney.
Yeah.
Amen. What have you noticed now between your era, Gen X, and current, that made you decide to say, what did you see that's different with the generations of lawyers that made you say, I'm going to do something different? And what was that different thing that you wound up?
When I first became a lawyer, again, because of this fairly unique path, or at the time it was fairly unique path that I'd taken, I was already married with 3 children. I'd gone through deployment with my husband, and I really wanted to settle down. So that is how I entered the legal field. And when I got to the legal field, I was met with people that said you had to, as a brand new attorney, you have to put in 12 hours a day. The law firm owns you. There is an expectation of how you would hold yourself. You couldn't tell anybody that you had a baby. The law firm owned you. And I thought, well, the military already owned me once. I'm not going to let anybody do that to me again. And I opened a law firm where I could practice law that I was comfortable with. That meant if I needed to take my kids to daycare a little bit late, I was going to do that. I was going to be open with the fact that I was a mom. I wasn't going to wear a suit every day. I was going to make it representation flexible enough for my clients so that they didn't feel like every time they walked into my office, it was a big to-do with me in some large executive chair and a marble desk. I really wanted law to be approachable with real life people, and I wanted it to feel that way. And I did. I created my law firm, but I'll tell you, when I first started, I had no money. I couldn't afford ads in the newspaper. We were still had newspapers then. I couldn't afford, radio or anything like that. So I relied 100% on going and telling people that I was an attorney. How many people can I tell that I'm an attorney a day? Because at some point they will hire me. And every single attorney I met at the beginning said,
what kind of attorney were you, so the viewers can understand?
well, at that point, I was an attorney that would take anybody that would take my case, right? What is your legal issue?
Don't you have to practice like either family, criminal, prosecution, injury? What was your specialty? You can tell 50 people that you're an attorney, but you can't go. Don't you have to have a specific area when you're in front of the judge?
Well, so I didn't do prosecution because that's with the government. But no, other than prosecution, you can be an attorney in practice anywhere, at least in California. And again, I didn't have any experience other than what I'd done previously in law school and with my dad and things. So I literally went out and said, I'm an attorney. I will help you. Like, what is your problem? My first case was a divorce. My second or third case was somebody who was arrested for driving without a driver's license. That's when I decided I didn't want to do criminal defense. But I really was going to take anything that I got.
Hey,
and
wait, what? Why you didn't want to do criminal defense?
Oh, you want to hear this story?
Yeah.
The client was arrested for driving without a license.
Okay.
On a misdemeanor.
Okay.
Because this was not the first offense of driving without a license.
3 strikes.
It wasn't 3 strikes, but it was, it's only misdemeanors, but still, at some point it's like, you should learn. So I went in, it was a misdemeanor with a $1,500 fine. That was, so my client gives me all of the reasons why the police were wrong and he was wrong, everything was wrong. And I said, okay, well, let's see what we can do. I went in, I got it down to an infraction.
Okay. A lot better.
With a $300 fine.
A lot better.
Way better. No criminal, nothing. And we literally walk out of the courtroom and he looks at me and goes, well, I should have never gotten arrested in the first place. That was stupid. They should have thrown it out. And I looked at him and I said, but dude, you drove without a license 3 times. An infraction with a $300 fine is pretty stinking good. And he was pissed, and he was pissed at me. And I thought, if this is what criminal defense is, I don't want to do it. I did so good. You got a great reduction and you're pissed because you did something wrong.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe I would have liked it if I continued on, but that was enough for me. I never touched it again.
Okay. So and that's something else I want to talk about. So you really went out on your own and started a business, and people need to understand you. Well, what was your husband? Did your husband help you out financially?
Yeah. So he still owns a company called DIY Barbecue that we started sort of together when he got out of the Army, because he was in the Army as well and got back from deployment. And through law school, I had, money from the military and stuff, but through law school, he really was the financial support. So he was basically providing our financial support. We still didn't have very much money, but we didn't have enough savings, right? We'd taken all of our savings when we started DIY Barbecue, which was about $10,000 to start that company. By the time I was ready to start my firm, his company was making enough to support us, but we hadn't really built a savings. I started my law firm on $1,800. And that is not a lot of money if you're trying to start a business, but it's possible. So feet to the pavement was really what I relied on very heavily. I also, because we had 3 children at that point and we had some financial issues, I had a huge incentive to become self-supporting and independent and feel like I was a financial contribution to my family. So I worked really hard to get us, past that initial no income place that I was at.
You own a law firm and we'll go back to this question, explaining the difference between the year that you came in, the millennium, and then what's going on today. But how do you actually wind up finding the right chemistry, other attorneys that believe in your journey?
Well, initially I didn't. Like I said, I got pushback from a lot of attorneys, but I thought, I don't care what you say because you're not my client. I care what my clients say because they're paying for my services. One of the reasons I think I got as much pushback as I did for as long as I did is because it worked. I had so many people that wanted to hire an attorney that was relatable, that spoke in plain language, that didn't try and make everything fancy, that talked to them like they were regular humans. And I really emphasized to my clients then, and I still try to now, that I chose to become an attorney. That's the career path that I chose, but it's not better or worse than anybody else's career path. It's just what I do. And I don't appreciate, so I don't think anybody else appreciates when you're meant to feel less than because of somebody else's career choice or lifestyle or financial situation. I didn't like how that felt to me. So I tried really hard not to transfer that onto my clients. And the people really allowed that transition to happen because I went from, like I said, no clients where I was just out hustling, telling people in the first year. I mean, when I first started, I opened my firm December 8th, 2014, to having an entire caseload and 2 employees after like my first year. So I really, really was providing a legal service that people wanted, and I got lots of clients, and I'm so grateful for that.
How do you narrow down what you want to specialize in? Say a lot of clients. I don't want the viewers to be like, well, she's just chasing every nickel.
When I first started, I took a lot of family law because it's easy to get family law cases, and everybody has family drama. And then I tried little things. I very quickly found out that, like I said, I didn't like criminal law. I really like family law. That could have been in my early days because of some of the family law issues that I experienced growing up. I also really like this. I shouldn't admit this, but I really like other people's drama. And I'm a natural problem solver. If I can, like, probably to the point where I drive my children nuts, but if I can solve your problem, I want to. So that was very helpful in family law. So I very, in the very beginning, I learned that I preferred family law. I did that for a while. From family law, and I still do family law. I still am a family law litigator. I've shifted a little bit of the kind of cases that I take, but through family law, I got what I can call crossover issues, right? So now the husband and wife are getting divorced and grandma dies. Hey, Rachel, can you just real quick help with grandma's estate or the house or something like that? And so I would do what, again, we call crossover issues, where I would learn another area of law because it related to the case that I was in. And that's truly how I found the second area of law that I absolutely adore. I love it so much. It's probably my favorite. And that is the elder abuse, conservatorship, trust litigation area. And those are the 2 things I do now.
What exactly?
If you can think that people, fighting over money is really where we find most of these areas. So if it's financial elder abuse or elder abuse, it's where somebody that's over 65 has been taken advantage of, misappropriated. Caregivers come in and take care of them and become their companion. So then the senior feels like they need to gift them things and through their estate.
Rachel, hold on one second. I'm going to re-ask that question. We got a little technical difficulty. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to take it back at that question right there. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So Rachel, 1, 2, 3. So Rachel, elaborate a little bit on that term that you're dealing with, trust and family law and senior citizen. Share a little bit more light on that.
When somebody reaches 65, right, then they, under the law, they become considered like an official senior. And this is where they, we always want to take care of our children, but our seniors need to be taken care of just as much. There is a huge amount of financial elder abuse that goes on either by family members, friends, caregivers, where somebody gets older, they need help. A caregiver or a family member comes in to provide that help. And then the senior thinks, oh, I'm going to give them all of my estate or a huge amount of it. And it's an entire criminal enterprise and it's illegal. So I've had clients that have been evicted from their own homes at 82 years old because a caregiver convinced them to sign the deed over to their house. And that wasn't what that senior wanted to do. They didn't mean to be homeless. So that, along with conservatorships or guardianships, when we have people with dementia, Alzheimer's, cognitive impairments from stroke, maybe just natural aging processes, really leave seniors vulnerable. And if I can solve those problems and make sure that our seniors are safe, that their money is financially protected, that they're getting the care that they need without being taken advantage of, that's truly my favorite area of law. And I do a lot of that litigation as well.
When should individuals start addressing this issue with their loved ones so this doesn't happen? And as an attorney, I know you can't give all the legal advice, but what should that individual do to protect that? So as they get older, I used to be a activities director for a nursing home, and I can see that a lot of the family members, when they drop them off, that's the final destination. A lot of the parents' children don't have anything to do with them. So I can see that becoming rampant. But what are 3 things that individuals should do to make sure that doesn't happen to their loved ones?
Communication is by far the biggest prevention in anything bad happening. Having that open communication, asking your family member or your parents, hey, have you done an estate plan and what do you want to have happen? I don't think it's necessarily appropriate to start saying, well, who's going to inherit? But just because that's invasive and that makes people uncomfortable. But just saying, did you take care of this? I've asked my parents, have you taken care of this? Or is this going to be an issue that I'm going to deal with later? So talking to them about whether they have an estate plan in place, what they want, keeping that communication open without having it become dramatic. The second thing is checking in is very important, especially when they're in some kind of assisted living or senior living community. From a personal level, my grandmother was in there. She had a lot of money, and there were a few caregivers that had I not checked in regularly with her, absolutely would have taken all of her money. I mean, she was taking them to wineries. They were driving her to Target, and she would buy all of their supplies from Target for their whole family, paid thousands of dollars at Costco. And my grandma's over here thinking, oh, it's fine. I don't mind. They do so much for me. And I'm thinking, well, you should mind. You're not supposed to be feeding their entire family. You're just paying their wage.
Right.
So the second thing, again, is being present, checking in. Bad people, criminals, don't want to be watched. So if there's more involvement from family, they're less likely to choose that as a victim. And then the third thing I would say is be proactive in taking action when you notice something that is cause for concern. So if you think, for example, that you find out that caregiver is taking your family member to Costco and dropping $1,000 a week, it's not enough necessarily to just say, oh, that's not okay. You want to take the next step, make your presence known, talk to your loved one about what's going on, and then seeing if there is anything legal that needs to be done. Is there memory issues that are causing a diagnosis of dementia to need to be evaluated, things like that. So those are the three things I would say.
How expensive is something like this? Because, a lot of people shy away from it because attorneys do charge by the hour. But I mean, how expensive is something like this usually going to run? And how long is the process to do something?
I can tell you that prevention is far less expensive than when the issue arises. So getting an estate plan done and putting protections in place is going to be so much less expensive than hiring me to come in and unwind the damage that is done. An estate plan is local based on where you live. Most of the attorneys I know do it actually on a flat fee basis so that you do know how much it's going to cost. Again, a couple $1,000s, maybe a few thousand. I think it depends on where your financial situation is and how many things need to be put in place. If we have to do a conservatorship, or for example, that case that I had where we had to go back and get the house back and have the senior back in her house owning it, that was over $100,000.
Wow. Before we wrap up, what are some of the things we talked about? The generations of lawyers? You definitely have stepped out the mold, running your own stuff. I'm proud of you for doing that. But what are some of the things that need to take place worldwide? We see a lot of political corruption. People are afraid to even talk to lawyers. What do you think needs to change?
Well, I think a lot of our legal system needs to be maybe completely revamped. I mean, if we're talking political, I think Congress should have term limits. I think that Congress was originally put in place to be of the people, and you would go in for 3 or 4 years and then go back to your farm or your business and be a voice for the people. And politically, it seems to have strayed from that and become a career path. I have a really hard time with somebody who is out of college, has never run a business or been able to support themselves financially outside of Congress, making decisions on how each of us should be living and the choices that should be made. But that's a personal issue. I think we should have term limits in Congress. I really, and this might be because I'm, a little bit older than the newer Gen Zs that are coming up. But I think people need to be responsible for themselves and aim to be financially independent. I am a huge advocate and a huge believer in financial independence, no matter where you are. And if you can become financially independent and take responsibility for yourself financially, then you have so many more opportunities and you will feel more in control of your own life. And ultimately, that's what we all want. We want to feel comfortable, confident, and in control of our own situation. In 2024, we have so many more ways to become financially independent than there were in the past. But I also think we're met with a lot of pushback as to what the expectation is. I think there's a disconnect between how much effort should go into something for financial reward. But if we can focus on and take back, or maybe get for the first time, financial independence and a self-drive to become financially independent with resources to teach people how to do that and how to make it happen, I think not only within the United States, but truly across the world, that will allow people to become the best versions of themselves and to take action and have the confidence to be the voice for the change that they want to see.
I want to thank you so much for coming, sharing such a beautiful story, enlightening individuals on the importance of recognizing how important it is to address legal concerns, even the part where you talked about the senior citizen, that you addressed that. A lot needs to be done. for our senior citizens, because if we start putting that motion in place first, it will help the next generation. And how can the viewers reach out to you for more and more information about what you do in your fight in helping other?
I'm on the socials at The Lawyer King. So reach out, follow, subscribe. And I have a podcast on YouTube called Gavels Down, Voices Up, General Legal Information, Rachel King Law. So please subscribe and listen.
This has been another exciting episode. Andre The Beast Crayton show.